My husband and I purchased our home in July of 2015. It was a pre-sale, and from the contract portion to having the keys in our hands, it was about 5 to 6 months. We were dropping by a couple of times a week to check on the progress of the house. We met a few of the neighbors and familiarized ourselves with the area. Our house is the corner lot on a private road at the very end of the neighborhood. The entire neighborhood is a dead end. One way in, one way out. Prior to our house being there, it was a vacant lot, which means that people parked here, as we live in the city and parking is regulated. It's dead quiet back here and nothing ever happens. I'm the type of person who's very observant. My husband likes to say, I'm the 80-year-old, get-off-my-lawn type, at the ripe old age of 28. I've never been good with names, though. Like I said, parking is regulated, so people parking on the side of the house which parallels the main road isn't uncommon. It's all 2-hour parking. At the time, my husband was working 12-hour shifts and was carpooling, so he was being picked up around 4 in the morning. He had just left, and I had heard a vehicle pull up shortly after, and I thought maybe he had forgot something. So I peek out of the window and I see a truck parked alongside of our house, facing the wrong direction. This wasn't his ride, and I hadn't ever seen this truck out here before. I figured maybe they were waiting to pick someone up for work and left it at that. Over the next 45 minutes to an hour, they continued to sit there. Engine off, engine on, engine off, engine on. Headlights off, headlights on. The truck was not in park, as I could see that the third brake light was on. It had also come and gone several times. If you're waiting for someone, why leave your engine on for an hour? Why drive back and forth? At this point, I was a little freaked out. It was approaching the time that I needed to leave for work, and I would have had to drive right past this truck in order to leave the neighborhood. I didn't know what this person was doing, and I was afraid that maybe they were casing the houses in the neighborhood, ours specifically. I texted my husband and he told me that it was weird, and if I was worried that I should just call 911. I didn't want to be dramatic, so I got ready and left. I left the living room light and TV on just in case. We have blinds over all of our windows and there's no way to see in. As I leave, I see that the truck is no longer there. I'm relieved. As I'm almost at the end of the neighborhood, I see the truck in another driveway. Now, I'm scared. What the fuck is this guy doing? As I drive past the truck, it turns around and heads back to our house. I thought, okay, if I'm going to call 911, I at least need the license plate number. So, I turned around and got what I thought was the make of the truck. It was a Mazda and I thought it was a Ford, and license plate number, and peeled out. I was so scared that I was physically shaking, and I stalled my car. As soon as I got out to the main road, I called 911 to report suspicious activity, gave the description, and said that I'd like to be contacted afterward about the outcome. The police station is 2 streets down, so I knew it would be quick. About 15 minutes later, as I'm pulling into work, I get a phone call from a police officer. He asks if I know a Mary. Nothing comes to mind. I'm bad with names to begin with, but I don't know a Mary. He asks if I'm familiar with the yellow house across the street. He tells me that it's Mary's house, and the man in the truck is Mary's ex-boyfriend, and they've been broken up for 3 years. I believe I said, I'm sorry, but what the fuck is he doing there then? He was watching the house. He had been stalking her. She was not home at the time. The officer told him that this behavior was, quote, fucking creepy, and not to ever show up again. The officer filed a report and patrolled the neighborhood for a few weeks. Even though I didn't know Mary, and we had only exchanged waves in passing, it was creepy as hell, and she needed to know. I've never seen anyone so freaked out. Apparently, it was not a mutual breakup. Her ex was obsessive and had some dependency issues. She had blocked all communication, and this was the last straw in order for her to get a restraining order. For whatever reason, she wasn't granted one earlier. Because our house/street is newer, it doesn't always show on maps or GPS, so we have to give people turn-by-turn directions. When I mapped our house recently, sure enough, Her ex's truck is parked in front of Mary's house. So, Mary's stalker, let's not ever fucking meet. Don't let me catch you in my neighborhood. Years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I took a job in the suburbs more than 20 miles from my downtown apartment. It was a really cool place in a great neighborhood, so it was worth the commute. One night on my way home from work, I decided to stop at a used record store in a strip mall near where I worked. I had a crush on my hipsterish neighbor who collected old jazz on vinyl, and thought maybe I could find something there that would give me a cool excuse to flirt with him. While I was in the store browsing, I noticed a gray-haired man in the next aisle looking at me. When our eyes met, he smiled, and I politely smiled back. I usually don't notice much about random people that smile at me, but there was an intensity to his eyes that caught my attention. He had one of those smiles that looked forced or insincere. I browsed around in a few other sections, but every time I looked up, I noticed the man staring at me. People stare, whatever, so I tried not to think too much of it, but I kept noticing him position himself across from me in nearly every aisle. It was clear he was trying to flirt, but I wasn't interested. For starters, he was at least twice my age, and definitely not my type. I just decided to pretend not to notice, even though he was repeatedly moving into my line of sight. I asked the staff for some help with the jazz section, and eventually made my selection, Illinois Jaquette. As I was waiting to be wrung out, I did a quick glance of the store to make sure the guy wasn't still lurking. Thankfully, he had left. I walked out to the parking lot and got into my car. The strip mall was along a busy thoroughfare, so I had to wait until traffic cleared to turn out of the parking lot onto the boulevard. While I waited for an opening, I just happened to glance in my rearview mirror and noticed the car leaving the parking lot behind me had a burnt-out headlight. Nothing weird about that. Just happened to notice. So like I said, the drive home was a long one, but mostly a straight shot along this busy thoroughfare. I merged into the left lane and pointed towards home. A few miles into the drive, I once again noticed a car behind me with a single headlight. Was it the same car? If so, it struck me as unusual that he hadn't passed, changed lanes, or turned off by then. I was listening to music and thinking about what to make for dinner. It was getting late, so I decided to stop for some fast food instead. Arby's, Taco Bell. I remembered an Arby's a couple miles from my house and a few streets over. Arby's it is. During the drive, I became preoccupied with planning which outfit to wear when I brought the LP to my neighbor's place. But I kept getting this nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach that compelled me to watch my rearview mirror. I glanced up a couple more times to see the one headlight car, still behind me, at least half a city block back. This was now easily 12 or 13 miles from where I first saw it. I was definitely aware, but still not overly concerned. It was a main thoroughfare that ran all the way from one end of a big city to the other. As I neared the turnoff toward Arby's, I switched to the right lane and slowed down. Once again, my eyes were drawn to my rearview mirror. Sure enough, the car with one headlight changed lanes, slowed, and turned onto the street behind me. Now I suspect I'm being followed. So I continue in the left lane and wait until just the last moment to switch to the right lane to pull into Arby's. As I make my turn, I try to watch for the car with one headlight. I don't want to have an accident, so I manage to only catch a brief glimpse of the car as it passes on by down the street. It's a gold sedan, but I can't make out any other details, and I can't see who's driving. I'm just relieved it wasn't following me after all. So, I relax and proceed to the drive-thru for my dinner order. I got my food and navigated my way out of the parking lot. The way the retail parking lots were designed, I had to exit through a supermarket strip mall lot, then out onto a side street in order to double back toward the main thoroughfare and head home. It was a long left turn, but it had a turn lane. I blast the radio and nibble on a few curly fries while I wait for my green turn arrow. I see a flash of light reflect across my rearview mirror. When I glance up, I see a car pull up in the turn lane behind me, with a single headlight. My heart jumped into my throat. I frantically locked all my doors and turned off the radio. The light turned and I pulled away as fast as I could, speeding back toward the boulevard. The single headlight turned to follow. I am now certain I'm being followed, and I know in my gut who it is. At the time, my state didn't require front plates, so I couldn't see a license plate number. This was also before most of us had cell phones, so I couldn't call for help. As I pulled back onto the main thoroughfare, I desperately try to recall where the closest police station is. I can't remember. Yes, he's now behind me again. I am definitely not heading home, and I don't want to piss this guy off. I remember a fire station a few blocks from me, and decide to head there. 2 or 3 turns on the back streets, and sure enough, the car is still behind me. He's hanging way back on the side streets now. I start to approach the fire station, but it's not as well lit as I'd hoped, and the doors are all closed. I drive past slowly, then decide to scrap that idea, and head back out to the main road where there's lots of traffic. Just before I reach the main boulevard, as the one headlight car slowly approaches from behind, I yank my steering wheel and swerve all the way from the right lane to the left turn lane. The car behind me just stops in the middle of the road. The driver now knows I'm aware he's following me, so I guess he decides, screw it, and pulls up beside me. It's that gray-haired man wearing a big, creepy smile on his face. I know I'm giving him a look of horror and disgust, so he just shrugs as if to say, "Okay, you caught me," then motions me to roll my window down. I just slowly shake my head. I can hear him yelling out his window. "Look, I thought we had a connection back at the record store. Can I buy you a cup of coffee?" I mouthed no at him and turned left. I am absolutely certain this guy did not follow me nearly 20 miles to ask me out for coffee. I doubled back through several side streets to the fire station, pulled up to their front door, and laid on my horn until someone came out. I think the guy gave up following me after he was discovered, but I sure as hell wasn't about to take any chances by going straight home. A couple firefighters came out and called the police for me, who arrived and escorted me home. To this day, I always wonder what would have happened if that guy's headlight wasn't burnt out. I would have never noticed him following me, and I would have driven all the way home.